Hi everyone, and welcome to our Data One-to-One podcast. My name is Sven Hermans, and I will be your host for today's episode. I'm joined here by Gregory Pierquin, who is the IT Director of Data, CRM, and Loyalty Platforms at Carrefour. Thank you for being with us, Gregory.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be there.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm really happy to share more insight about the data and the usage we have at Carrefour. So it's great to be there.
Thank you. So your current role is the IT Director of Data, CRM, and Loyalty Platforms. It's not a title we see at every company. Can you explain a bit more about your role?
You're right. It's not a common title. It's just because I led a transversal department, and so at the first part we manage all the data platform, and we really think that it's really important to have a coherent and conciliate view on all the data that we can have at Carrefour. And the second part, and it's really linked with the data, it's the customer. We want to really correctly manage the relation with the customer, to have a good view on the customer, to propose a lot of things for the customer. And so it's important to be close to the data and to have the master data management of the customer also. So that's why I have this department.
Okay, interesting. And can you tell us a bit more how you got there, what your personal path was to become that role?
Yeah, so I joined Carrefour 7 years ago. That was the first time that I joined the retail sector, because in the past I was in the banking and telecom sector. I started my journey as self-scan product manager. So there was really the application to be in contact with the customer, because that's the self application that the customer can use in our store to do their own basket during the shopping trip. Mm-hmm. So that was really great, because during my journey I could go to the store to be in contact with the customer, to get the feedback, to have more information, to see how it's work in the store. And that's really important at the Carrefour level, that you have a good view on all the store process. Mm-hmm. Then I moved to the digital department, where I led the e-commerce platform, and I led also a large transformation project. So we merged all the website. And I had the opportunity then to discover a new world. For me, there was a new world. There was the data, less in contact with the customer. That was the first time there was less in contact with the customer. But it stayed in relation with the customer. It stayed really important, and the customer is at the center of all the topics. So that was great for me. That was a great challenge.
Because actually you're still managing that customer's data.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So how does data and analytics support your mission at Carrefour to drive your company?
As you can imagine, Carrefour is a company with a lot of data. We use data for more than 20 years, I want to say. And from the beginning, you need to use the data with the Excel file, with everything, just to drive correctly the company. But now we are in new trajectory where we try to use the customer data, but also all the other data that we have in the new technology to really give more analytics and more power to the business to take the correct decision and to take quick decision.
Okay. And so how does Carrefour differentiate itself towards its competitors when you're using data analytics?
That's a good question. So Carrefour, it's an old company in Belgium. So previously it was GB. So we have a loyalty program for more than 50 years from now. So we have a lot of customer data. And that's really important to have a correct relation with the customer. And then what is really important for us is to understand the customer and to give a real personalized message to the customer, to be sure that he receives the right message. We don't want to spam the customer. And so what it's really differentiate in terms of retail is the fact that we have, for the moment, personalized offer. Every 2 weeks, the customer receive in their mailbox a real letter with specific offer for them. So it's really great.
So every customer actually receives a different newsletter based on their experience.
So you have the newsletter, you have also your specific coupon on your mobile application and so on. So we really want to have a personalized relation with the customer.
Okay, great. So apart from that, do you have other data projects you're currently working on?
Yeah, so the mission of the department, it's why we create the department, it's really to review the data architecture, to be sure that we can combine all the data and we can avoid the old architecture we had with a lot of duplicate and I want to say, duplicate data. The fact that we had a lot of data platform in the past, we want to centralize everything, to create a data hub. And so our main mission is really to create this data hub and to facilitate the data access for everyone.
Okay. Sounds great. So in some of those projects, you collaborated with Devoteam G Cloud, right? Can you just go a bit more detail into that project?
So 2 years ago, we started the discussion with the Carrefour Group because, in fact, in Belgium, we are quite mature. We have, in the past, I want to say old-fashioned big data technology that was on-premise with a lot of issue because you have to manage your infrastructure, you have to manage the resource that you offer for the user. And we started the discussion with the group and with Google, because there was the partnership that we had with Google to move to a new technology. And the goal to move to a new technology was to be sure that every group, every entity at Carrefour can use the same technology and can also use the same data model. If you have that, you can easily share between the country the insight, the analytics part, but also the data. And so we started the discussion with the group. But for us in Belgium, that was the first time that we moved to the Google world. And we had some discussion with Devoteam G Cloud to support us and to explain us what could be all the interesting products for Google that we can use, because Google has so many products that you need to have some expertise to define the correct architecture that you want.
So Devoteam G Cloud helped you in defining best practices and choosing. Do you have some other examples of how a Google Cloud partner could help you in your Google Cloud journey?
Yeah, so for us, Devoteam G Cloud was really, really important because they proposed us to use the Flix framework they have, and it could accelerate a lot of journey, because if we have to reinvent all the wheel, that's always possible, but it takes a lot of time, and we didn't have the expertise to do it. So we check, we control with the group about the architecture, we review the architecture together, and then we create our own instance in Belgium based on the Flix framework. And we earn, at least 6 months, I want to say, just to be sure that we have our data up and know it's live. So we are happy with that.
Okay, cool. So that was clear that it had a technological impact. So what was the business impact of joining with this?
So the business impact is certainly the easily and facilitate to get the data. Because in the past there was a more complex platform, I want to say, where if you want to really reach some data, you need to ask data engineer to create the data model for you. You need to do a lot of code. Now with the new technology we have, the business can directly, depends the competency, but data scientists and some data analysts can directly jump into the data. They can directly transform the data if they need to create some data mark and so on. So it's really a gain for the business also.
Okay. And so you're mentioning that you bring all that data together using the Flix framework, and it's mainly customer data, right? Because you want to provide personalized experience.
At the beginning, yeah.
Okay. So I imagine that there are some challenges regarding GDPR.
Of course.
How do you navigate through that?
But with GDPR, you have some aspect for the moment. For the analytics part, you don't need to have the private data of the customer. If you have all the transactional data, it's sufficient to have a view on the habits of the customer. But of course, at GDPR point of view, you need to be compliant. You need to inform correctly the customer. That's the business activity. They have to correctly inform and get the consent of the customer. But at the IT side, it's very important to be sure that we use the data and we authorize to use the data only when we have the consent of the customer. So if the customer doesn't give any consent, you will need to be sure that this data is not available for everyone to do any analytics on that. So that's a challenge that we have every day, just to be sure that we use only the needed data, that we clean also the data. We have some, we have a life cycle of the data, we have some retention policy, but we need to be sure that all the mechanisms are in place. And aside that, you need also to be sure that at the security point of view, everything is correct, because you need to avoid any breach. You don't want to have any data breach, but you also need to be sure that only the authorized people has access to the data. I don't want that for example, the merchandise people who has to have a good view on the assortment has also a view on all the name of the customer. They don't need that. They just need to have a view on the potential customer of the store.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so managing a large project like this, what team do you put on this project? So what are the roles involved in the team that is working on this?
It's quite complex as project, but the first person that you need to engage in this project is the business. You need to have a view on the data owner and the business sponsor, but also the data user. So you need really to understand the process, and you need to be a side of the business to see what they want to do, what it's really important for them. And so for that, you need to have a correct data analyst or data translator to be a side of the business, to see the business process, and to identify which data can be used, can be interesting for this process, and which sort of result we can offer at the end. And then finally, you need to have the data engineer, because you need to implement it.
Yeah. And how big is your team?
Depends the project, but we have for the first foundation, it's around 10 or 50 people. It depends.
Okay. So what sort of advice would you give to a company that is just starting their journey of using data analytics? What is really important is to have the sponsorship of the business. You have to explain to the business what you can do with the data. Everyone knows that the data is important, but everyone's create his own Excel sheet, I want to say, just to monitor and to drive their decision. So you have to explain to the business that, yeah, that's good that you have that, but we can do more. We can easily extract all the data, combine all the data you want. We can easily propose and recommend for you some decision. And so you need to educate the business. You need to inspire the business. You need to be a side of the business to explain why data is interesting for them. Because if you wait that the business come to you with some use case, you will never implement something. Okay. Indeed, at the start, when you set up this project, it might be hard to immediately find the business value. It takes some more time. So doing a big data project like this, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that leaders like you face today in implementing such projects?
The biggest challenge that you have is indeed to have the sponsorship of the business, to have all the use case, but also create a coherent roadmap, because you cannot see every business at the same time, because at the end you will give some immediate expectation, and you can give some frustration because you are not ready to answer everyone at the same time. But the most difficult also is to have quality data. You need to be sure that the business can be confident with what you offer at the end. You have only one opportunity. You give the report or you give the insight at the end of your trip. If this insight is not correct and will not help the business, it will just not use anymore. And so you lost all the possibility to have a business adopt your technology.
And how do you make sure that happens then to assure the quality of your data?
So it's really important to invest in data governance, but data governance in terms of data quality. You can come with a data governance very strict at the beginning with all the theoretical practice and so on. But I think the most important is really the quality, and you need to understand from where comes the data, which sort of transformation you have, which sort of manipulation you can have, and so really give confidence to the business. And for that, you need to work on the data governance.
Okay. So if you could look back on your project right now and identify a mistake or something that you would do better right now, what would that be? Or I don't know, just something that happened in the past, and if you would look at it right now, you would think, oh, I might want to do that differently, or I would advise someone to be aware of that.
It's really a difficult question. If I look back, it's really at I want to say the education of the business. It's really important. It's really key, because in your project for the moment, I want to say that it's an IT project. We migrate from the existing big data environment to the new one. So that's really great for the business, for the IT people. But you need to be sure that the business understand why you want to change the technology. It's not just to be exciting for the IT. It's more to be exciting for the company.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to have the roadshow with the business, and that's something that maybe we miss in the past.
And so how do you convince them then? I mean, you can say, we can, for example, build dashboards, but I think you have multiple ways of activating your data at Carrefour, right? So you have those dashboards and then the recommendation or personalization of your newsletters. How do you convince them that it has such an added value?
I think that for this activity, you really need to be a side of the business. You need to understand the business, and that's the most difficult. So you need to take time with the business and to be on the job with them. That's the only way that you can convince. Otherwise, you can show every video or every picture you want, but if you don't really be with the business to confirm that it's a good thing for them, you will not have the adaptation.
Okay, thank you. I think that's definitely your main takeaway of this call, that it's not just technology, but it's really the relationship between the business. So thank you for that. You gave us plenty of insights. I'm sure that our listeners will be happy to have that information.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.